Very outset, I would like to thank the principal of the college, Professor Torun Bandyopadhyay, for kindly inviting me to speak uh, on an area which is my favorite, and also to Rajraj Mukhopadhyay, who is in fact a very good scholar and a very good human being. So I also express my thanks to him, to both of you, for calling me to speak a few words on Sri Aurobindo's epic, one part of the epic, not the whole one because it is too vast. I would focus on just the dialogue with death that comes in Book 10, Chapter 3, 4. And it is the most dramatic book of the epic. And I would always suggest this part to be the part of the syllabus because this is the most interesting as poetry, as poetic drama, and as something which is needed for the whole of humanity. Because we are disintegrated, but we have to live a life of integrity, and man is important because heaven we have already conquered. But what about this planet? This is the main issue of Sri Aurobindo's epic. That heaven we have already conquered, but what about changing the nature of the earth? Can you hear me? Can you hear me all?
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
continue.
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
we can hear you. Perfect.
Yes. I will divide the talk into three parts. First, I will briefly speak of the concept of new woman, which was arguably termed by Sarah Grant in 1894 in an article. But there are others who have used the term, and it is now a controversy who used it first. But I go back to the late 1870s and then in 1882, when Henry James wrote his novel Portrait of a Lady. My theoretical framework is Henry James's novel Portrait of a Lady, where we have a character called Isabel Archer. He is referred to by Henry James as the new woman. Now, this is the theoretical part, but there is no unified definition of new woman. The blacks also have claimed them to be new woman. And so, and almost simultaneously, Henry James a little earlier. So, there are many roles for the new woman, not just one role. And this diversified role is important. And we come to Sri Aurobindo's epic just to show how relevant Sri Aurobindo is to these new movements. Well, of course, we compare them with an Indian because there are two makers of Indian tradition, Rabindranath Tagore and Sri Aurobindo. They have spoken of the whole thing, the whole stuff, taking here and there, both, and also a completeness of life which they seek. Now, because my audience I know is not aware of the theme of Savitri, so in my second part I will speak of a little of something like a gist of the epic. Now, Sri Aurobindo started writing it many years back in Baroda, and it was 50 years growing. And at different times he took it up, and As he rose to a new level of consciousness, he would like to revise his epic. So it was written for more than 50 years. 50 years are the minimum time, but it could be more than 50 years that he was in it, and it is his magnum opus. And it is in a way more clear than the Life Divine, which is a bit difficult for the initial reader. But Savitri is poetry, and it is majestic poetry, it is attractive poetry, and it accommodates the lyric within the epic, drama within the epic, and as in the book of in the dialogue between love and death, it will be the climax of drama. Now, what is the epic about? The story in the Mahabharata runs to only 600 lines, and it is simply a story of conjugal love. Now, when Sri Aurobindo started taking it, he was drawn to the names of the characters. And he found that behind the names, there are hidden in the history of humanity, lost in the history of humanity, some clues to what they meant. Like Satyavan is the man who carries the truth. Satyam Bahati Iti. And Savitri is the splendor, the daughter of light. In the Vedic scripture, they would call her Gayatri, the daughter of light. Ashtapati, Savitri's father, is the lord of force, tremendously powerful. Only the lord of force can give birth to the daughter of light. And then Satyavan's father is blind, Dumat Sena. Dumat is shining, Sena is host, shining host. He is blinded, he comes to the earth to get back his sight. Now these are the clues Sri Aurobindo found initially in the when he started digging out, and ultimately the 600 lines turned into the long verse epic in English literature. 23,813 lines. In the corrected version, it becomes 809. There's a controversy about the text because many people do not like these corrections on Sri Aurobindo's own text. So they would prefer, I myself prefer Sri Aurobindo's own text and not the corrections. So this is the history, and what is this woman doing on earth? Because in the very opening of the epic, to pre-creation darkness, it was the hour before the gods awake, and it was all dark. Fathomless zero occupied the world. Darkness upon darkness, layers of darkness. And then throughout the history of humanity, Sri Aurobindo says at one place in his interpretation of the Veda that it could be more than 10,000 years old, not 3,500 years old. And recently NASA has caught a breach. Myth is life, is history. The new historians, the left historian, claim that myth is not history, but is history. Our technology, through our science, we explore these myths and we find what happened many, many thousand years ago. Now, this was the lost story which he took up to reveal what was hidden there. And this is the concept of a woman. Now, speaking of Sri Aurobindo, let me tell you, first time who claimed it in this difficult and disturbing world, and sidelined because of that, because he claims that the major three texts ascribed to the Hindus are not only by name Hindu texts, but the audience is humanity. That is why we have so many Muslim and Christian devotees of Sri Aurobindo, because the Vedas, the Upanishads, and even the Gita is not a sectarian text. So this is the first thing which we have to remember, that there is nothing of Hindu here. Well, Hindu is a name to characterize a civilization. Even Vivekananda was known as a Hindu monk, but he was trying to revive an old heritage. And very unfortunately, he is still called a Hindu monk, but actually he was trying to revive an old culture, very old, which was addressed to humanity. So this is the audience of Sri Aurobindo, not the Hindus, but the entire humanity is Sri Aurobindo's audience. Nothing of the sectarian in his major texts. And these three texts, the concept of the eternal feminine, the concept of the eternal feminine was there in Christianity. The concept, because it's a misconception that the Vedic texts were patriarchal and the Tantric texts were matriarchal. It's wrong, because in many texts of the Vedas, right, just like in the Rig Veda, there are references to Saraswati as the mother of inspiration. Like in Greece, it is Hippocrene and Pegasus. So we have Saraswati as the mother of inspiration. And this has nothing to do with religion. It's an absolutely spiritual concept for all. And that is why Christianity has also the concept of mother worship. This is an epic about the cosmic woman who is waiting to come down on earth to try the errors of humanity and mankind. These divides, disharmonies, tribes, to change the entire consciousness of humanity so that there is no division. And it sounds like utopia, but it is a reality, because we have to walk step by step up in the ladder of consciousness, from the brute to the mediocre to the elite, in terms of spirituality, not in terms of religion, because religion, to say, obsolete. The age of religion is over. So here is a conscious force or a cosmic woman force who is leaning down on earth to save humanity. And this woman is not interested in winning glories for her. She is a new woman in the sense that, like Isabel Archer in the Portrait of a Lady, she is an explorer. In Portrait of a Lady, Isabel says, I will see, I will explore. And all the moments there are as the woman as an agent of transformation. The woman as a force, which Sri Aurobindo calls conscious force or consciousness force. And sometimes he calls it the magnet of a difficult ascent, chumbak. In Christianity also, and most probably in other scriptural texts, there could be this concept of the World Mother leaning down on earth. Now she has a role to play, not the victory of heaven, because heaven already conquered. She has come to change the earth, to transform, and to make a new race beyond man, because
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Someone muted you.
Muted me. Okay. Now it's okay?
Yes, sir.
Archer. She is a free being for the first time in literature. In modern literature, in the late Victorian literature, Henry James introduces a lady who wants to explore, to see for herself without the aid of others. In the doll's house, there's an interesting dialogue translated by Somu Mitra. আমি বলে দেবো তুমি সেই মতো চলবে. This is not that. There's no dictation. Because in a major text called Warren's Terminations, Aurobindo refuses to accept patriarchy and he says patriarchy must go immediately. Because the old concept of patriarchy, the child as the property of the father, must go immediately. And the woman as a property of the husband must go immediately. With these views, we are aware of these views. Now, what does Savitri do in the dialogue with death? It's a great dialogue and very engaging dialogue. And as T.S. Eliot calls of poetry which is emotion and action at the same time, which is emotion and it is pushing the action. And speech and action must be interpenetrated. Speech and action must be interpenetrated in drama. Then it will be a poetic drama. Now, there are passages in this dialogue when the dialogues are a bit too long. But don't think this is a Tagorean dialogue. Because Tagore was thinking of a new form of drama, entirely a new form of poetic drama, and Sri Aurobindo's tradition is Shakespeare and Sophocles, the true playwrights of yesteryears. The only difference between Vijay Tendulkar's speeches and Sri Aurobindo's speeches in Dialogue with Death is that the speeches are a bit too long. But the most interesting thing is that within the speeches of the Lord of Death and Savitri, within the speeches, there is drama, dramatic interactions, conflicts. Not that Death and Savitri are in conflict, but within the speeches of Savitri, within the speeches of the Lord of Death, there are conflicts. In their addresses, they contain a great thought for future humanity, how to shape the future humanity, how to make a world full of harmony. And of course, individuality, freedom is extremely important for this world. Variation of worship. Sri Aurobindo repeatedly says that not one form of worship should be there, not one form of nation, because this variety will be the basis of future civilization, future poetry, future life, future marriage, future meeting. This variety will be there. No two men will speak alike. No two women will speak alike. So this is the great freedom that we find. And if you see this dialogue, that first Savitri takes up a journey like Isabel Archer. She comes from America to England taking a voyage, and she continues her voyage of discovery. Savitri too Savitri too Savitri too continues this journey inward, exploring both the problems outward and inward, not just inward. And To be frank with you, Sri Aurobindo never left politics. He never left life. It is a wrong concept that Sri Aurobindo left Kolkata in search of a distant God, in search of a lonely freedom, isolation. He was involved, committed. His last speech was 3 months before his passing. He told an MP that China would be divided into three parts. That was his prophecy. So he was in politics. So this spirituality is not a spirituality of the old days, not the true spirit of the old spirituality, right? And unlike Gandhi, Tagore and Sri Aurobindo says technology and science are important. We can't go back to the village to make a village, right? A decorative village, but the village must contain hospitals, post offices, and all the basic amenities along with nature. So this is the difference between Gandhi and Tagore and Sri Aurobindo, that they speak of, they accept science and technology. Only they advise technology and science not to be over intrusive into the subjectivity of man. So this is a very interesting epic, and I have focused on just one part where there's a great dialogue running in book 10. It's an engaging dialogue, and I said I always prescribe this for the masters or for the MPhil texts. Death is also a symbol of patriarchy, because if you read the interaction, the debate, the tussle of words, the interaction, the drama, you will notice that death is standing as a voice of patriarchy and always belittling Savitri's power. You woman, what can you do? You little woman. That is where Sri Aurobindo comes out with his idea. This little woman is of tremendous, unthinkable force, without which you can't do. And when Savitri wins and dies and defeats Lord of Death, you win for all, for the families, because creation is a joint adventure. So you can easily relate, counter react, and sometimes find relations with Alice Walker's idea of womanism, with Sri Aurobindo's idea as expressed in the dialogue with death. So death is a symbol of patriarchy. Raj, will you allow Sharoni to join? Hello, Raj.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please share the link with her.
Sharoni wants to join.
Okay, please share the link with her.
I have shared the link.
Okay. The admin will allow her.
Okay. So death is the voice, the dominating voice of the death. Sri Aurobindo's rhetoric. If you notice Sri Aurobindo's rhetoric, it is the voice of patriarchy. It is the man speaking to woman. Touch not the secret lines, with a directive verb. এখানে এসো না, পৌঁছো না. Don't touch the line beyond your border. So limiting the place for women, the idea from the Lord of Death. Actually, he is falsity, but he is hiding the reality within himself. He is tasting, but he stands as the voice of patriarchy. Touch not these seed lines. Go beyond. Don't go beyond this. You are a woman, he indicates. So in reader response theories, you will see that The readers are responding to a text as they like. So no devotee of Sri Aurobindo will enjoy my talk today, because I am not speaking in the line of devotion. I am speaking in the line of literature, critical literature, and it is a different thing apart from spirituality, which is there. There is a strong battle between patriarchy, between the female and the male, where the female does not deny the male, but defeats the male and wins him back and makes him her equal. Notice my argument. Here the female defeats the male, wins him back, and makes him her equal, not neither superior nor inferior, because it's a work of togetherness, and both are equally powerful, both have something to contribute. This is the new concept of woman, of the future woman, not just the new woman. You have the concept of the future woman, of which Sri Aurobindo speaks. And death is here trying to frustrate this feminist movement. If you go by reader response theory, if you are not a bhakta of Sri Aurobindo, then it is Aurobindo as a writer, as a poet, as a critic, a dramatist. And here he is trying to imprison the female with sex and lust. These are the two things with which patriarchy dominates them, and children. And so Savitri catches his clever proposal. He says, no, I am here to win back the entire humanity for the world, and for the earth, I want to change the earth. I don't want my personal glory. So here you have the woman as the leader, the captain, the executive. The mother has called the woman as the true executive. If we are given the position of a headship, you will see how difficult it is to run a headship as a man. But a female does it so accurately, so neatly. We can't reach out there. Their perfection of work. So we need this perfection. As male, we cannot deny this. And all the time Savitri is demanding the respect from the Lord of Death. That no, you can't underestimate me as a little woman. So then, as a way of tasting, the Lord of Death tells Savitri to show her force. Then she reveals herself. And quite often we don't know this is a reality. This is a reality, and you will see again and again how in your personal life, in our personal lives, you are saved by your partner, friend, by your female friend. Always with the new intelligence, always with a new power, equal in might, maybe a bit varying, but equal. So finally she just reveals herself a great force, a fire. And this fire is going to leak out patriarchy. And he runs away. But after he runs away, or his running away is a signal that it is time for patriarchy to go in the context of the new woman who is here to explore. And the contraries will be there. All contraries prepare for harmony. Man, woman, contrary is inevitable necessity, the law of nature, and it has to be there, but it has to be ultimately harmonized. And the new woman, as future woman, also speaks of that. So it will be something like defeating patriarchy in his own territory, because Yama is the Lord, Savitri has entered into his territory, defeating him on his own ground, and then not rejecting the male. But she asks, she says, I am a deputy of the aspiring world, and I seek not my personal liberty. As the mother has said, women are born executors. So this is the work, the execution which Prakriti makes. Purusha is here inactive. Without this activating force, it has no power. So in a beautiful drama, because I've said that he is not he's not using the drama like Tagore, like Gandhari Abedan, where there is no tension, no interaction of speech, long passages. Here too you have long speeches, but even within the speeches there is tension, what T. Eliot calls the fusion of poetry and tension. That is the essence of poetic drama, and also the realistic dialogue which comes out of tension. So difference between silence the court is sensation, because I have noticed that in many speeches in the silence in the court sensation, in many speeches, speech is both poetry and action. It is concealed poetry. Similarly, here also you have that, but not that quick exchanges. There are long passages because it is also a doctrine that has to be that revealed as poetry. Doctrine in it as imagination. Doctrine that will come as a new vision. So it should be long. But the interesting thing is that as drama, it is not a flop, but it follows exactly Eliot's theory of drama. Poetry and tension come together, and as Christopher Fry says in an article published in Vogue many years back, poetry in the theater is the action of listening. So it is this action that you see in this great debate. So always go for these two cantos. Everybody will be fascinated by Sri Aurobindo's poetry alone. You have to forget about the rishi, the sage, whatever name you may give him. He was not at all an alienated being. He was very much here, not at all there, very much rooted in the earth consciousness. And with this and his poetry and his drama, you will see that this is a new kind of poetry, a new kind of drama, and a new kind of idea of how to make a new species out of man. Because man is not final. In our mental knowledge, we think that man is the best. There is nothing beyond man. But biological science tells us that nature cannot be satisfied with an imperfect creation. It will always try to make a better creation. So a new species is in the offing, it is coming, and it will be hastened by the initiative of man. This is what Sri Aurobindo calls new creation. And this new creation, maybe 5% of the human race will be the leaders of humanity. Then otherwise, whoever may be the politicians, whoever may be, whatever may be their political party, the same things will be repeated because man's consciousness has not changed. strife, disharmony is inside. You can't live with your wife peacefully within yourself, in your room. Even if you have large rooms, 10 rooms, you can't live peacefully with your wife. With one person, you can't adjust. As Sri Aurobindo tells us that there are ways to find out this harmony, and this woman's force is extremely interesting, and it has to be invited. It has to be the leader of our consciousness, the lady of the voyage, we say, the captain of our being, so that we become equals and the entire notion of patriarchy is destroyed to make a new living existence of harmony, unity, where the human beings will live with the soul's brotherhood. Sri Aurobindo uses the phrase soul's brotherhood, not brotherhood. Brotherhood is a fake term. Sri Aurobindo says in the ideal of human unity that it should be a soul's brotherhood. Only then you can be united with the other. You won't hate the other. And but at the same time, he says that there is a necessity for infinite variety, because this world is not Sankaracharya's Maya. It is Leela. It is a playfield of the divine. So you have to enjoy here, keeping the spirit intact and initiating the coming of the new race who will lead humanity from this dismal, will change this war-affected planet, these pollutions, ecological imbalance. Everything has to be sorted out only through the collaboration of man and woman. So as a new woman, Savitri is also the future woman. Traditionally, comes from Henry James's Isabel Archer, but she leaves behind Isabel Archer in search of greater things. And we have to know that in India we have masters. Well, we must worship Foucault and Kant, but not neglecting our Indian masters. Thank you for listening. Questions?
Thank you, sir. I would like to request the audience who are listening to our lectures to please reserve your questions for later. I have a question for Professor Goutam Ghosal, sir. That sir, what is the difference? Can you kindly elaborate, explain a bit the difference between the concept, the very unique concept of new woman, which you presented in Savitri, the unique approach, and the traditional view of new woman, which we find, suppose in Thomas Hardy's Youth of Steel, in the character of Sue Brighthead, or in the classical Victorian uncanny novels like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the characters of Lucy Westenra and Nina Harker, or in the character of Sarah Woodruff in the French Lieutenant's Woman. So, what is the difference, or the difference between the notion of these two view of new woman? Kindly elaborate, sir. Hello.
Well, Raj, that takes us to the tradition. And in fact, from the Victorian age, the concept of the new woman was growing. And this sense of exploration, this sense of adventure, this sense of the unforeseen, and trying things out for himself, for herself. This is a very old, 19th century, it is coming from 19th century English literature. So what is different in Savitri is that Savitri also gives it a future dimension. That is, she is not seeking a selfish liberation for the female, but a total resistance to the very powerful voice of patriarchy, and at the same time pointing to the future possibilities of a fusion, a harmony after this battle of the sexes are over. So that is the new woman as future woman. My theoretical framework was Isabel Archer from Henry James's novel of written in 1881. It was written before the term was coined by Sarah. So, and it means a lot of things. But Savitri gives it a new dimension, and taking it as the problem of living together in this planet. And Yoma is as if a representative voice of patriarchy. See the thundering voice of Yoma, and he is always saying in terms of negativity. That is what, and also temptations, because patriarchy always tempts to distract, to divert women, and many great writers have also treated their wives very wrongly, their writer wives. I won't name, there's a great Bengali writer who hasn't treated her wife very well. So Savitri takes a very large look, an integral look, which is missing in the past. It was initial, faint. They were not able to find the synthesis which is there in Savitri's resistance to the patriarchal voice. Is that okay? Is that okay? Raj?
Thank you, sir. The next question. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question is. Yes, sir. Hello. Yes, sir. It is perfectly okay. Any more questions from the audience? From the listeners? Yes. So we have a question to Professor Goutam Ghosal, sir. Question by Abid Choudhury. He is asking that, sir, can we segregate Hinduism, a religion, from Indian culture? Can we segregate? Sir, please. Hello.
Actually, there is no reason to segregate unless you go down to a perverted Hindutva, because that is giving a different impression of a heritage which was, everybody is speaking of Sanatana Dharma, nobody knows what it is. Because it belongs to humanity, it does not belong to the Hindus. But we have a kind of distorted variety of Hinduism which is termed as Hindutva. So definitely it is not spirituality. The eternal religion is only religion by name. It is a spiritual way of living, a turning, a change, a transformation of human consciousness so that there can be human unity from the lowest to the highest. So it is not exactly prescribed for a particular sect. It is absolutely non-sectarian. Sri Aurobindo, hello, let me finish. Hello. Sri Aurobindo is sidelined by the politicians just because of this, because he is not speaking of any distorted Hindutva which excludes other sects, because the term Sanatana Dharma is widely misinterpreted by the politicians of today. It is a different thing. Everybody has right to it, and it is only the name Dharma, the word Dharma is there, but it is a spiritual way of living. And the three major texts, the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Gita, are not sectarian texts. Maybe the Hindus preserved them. They lived by the Indus River, so maybe it was preserved by them, but it was so long back In Isha Upanishad, Sri Aurobindo indicates that it could be 10,000 years old that these thoughts were thought of first, then recorded much later. So it has nothing to do with orthodox religion. Sri Aurobindo calls Hindutva religionism, which is a bad thing. He differentiates between religion and religionism. Religionism is what we see as Hindutva today, and religion is the essence of spirituality, and everybody has access to it. That is why so many Christians and Muslim devotees are there for Sri Aurobindo, because they know the idea is to transform the consciousness, and there is nowhere in the Veda or the Gita or the Upanishad where the audience is a particular sect. So this is the attitude we have to change. And more Sri Aurobindo's, after 1910, he stopped using the term Hindu as much as possible, only as a passing reference or giving it, because he knew the term is going to be distorted very soon. And this is the difference. It is not a religion. What we see today is not, it is sectarian. What we see today, it is sectarian. It is an effort to sideline certain communities and elevate one community. But you live to transform your nature. The yoga of transformation is Sri Aurobindo's yoga. It is not Ramdev Baba's yoga. It is the yoga of transformation. It is also called synthesis yoga. It is called integral yoga, which embraces all parts of life, and it aims to correct, better, aesthetically improve, spiritually enlighten the condition of humanity with variety. And Sri Aurobindo accepts variety of worship. He says one variety of worship is absurd. So that shows that is why political parties have sidelined Sri Aurobindo, because he doesn't go with this Hindutva. Is it clear?
Yes. Thank you, sir, for your kind response. Now, next question to you from Suprabhat Chatterjee. He questions that how a faith in divinity define the future new woman along with rationality, which otherwise solely define feminism. Question to Professor Ghosal, sir.
Would you clarify the question? The question is a bit hazy.
Suprabhat Chatterjee is asking you how a faith in divinity define the future new woman along with rationality, which otherwise solely define feminism.
So see, there are two kinds of rationality. One is lower rationality, the logic of the brain, the logic of the simple mind. The other is a higher rationality, which is not exactly intuition, but in between intuition and rationality there is a higher rationality which leads towards greater things. The moment you open towards faith, you enlarge, and the moment you enlarge, nobody becomes your enemy. The entire world becomes your relation. And that way the future feminism will be the feminism of equality, the feminism of harmony, accepting the fact that there are certain things where men can contribute. They are very powerful there. We can't say women are less powerful, even physically. Even physically, certain women are more powerful than men. So this is through faith, it takes you to spirituality. The question of faith, it takes you to spirituality. I was not speaking of spirituality. I was avoiding spirituality and focusing on the general sense. And I'm speaking of higher rationality, which will change the future attitude to the problem. Higher rationality is not intuition. Ordinary rationality is just the rationality which you have as a logic in the classroom. Higher rationality is almost close to intuition. It gives you a better knowledge of truth, a perception of truth. This perception is more important than brain clamped mentality. And this brain clamped mentality has affected our quest for wisdom. It is only, as Blake has said in one of his poems, bones of the dead. That means, as Sri Aurobindo says, the logician thinks so accurately that he is seldom correct. The logician thinks so accurately that he is seldom correct, because there is a higher reason and beyond that intuition, and faith takes us to those areas. Definitely it will be a transformation of humanity in the future, and faith is definitely a way.
Thank you, sir.